Hi everyone, I'm Sharon and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'll be creating a 3D pop-up slimline card featuring an incredible day of fun at the annual summer fair for critters. Every year, lawn fawn critters gather from near and far for their favorite fluffy cotton candy treats, the wild thrills of the roller coaster rides, and their chance to win a stuffy prize at a game booth. Let's get started with a quick overview of the Lawn Fawn products that I will be using to create this card. A full list of supplies can be found in the description box below. I use almost all of the images from the super fun-filled Coaster Critters stamp set, 2 critters from the Virtual Friends stamp set, the PopUp Hooray, Oliver Stitched ABCs, a number of clouds from All the Clouds, Just the Thought Bubble from Happy Hugs, the Grassy Hillside borders, the Scripty Happy from the Happy 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 stamp set, the Cloudy Stencil, some tropical red textured dot cardstock, and lastly some cilantro cardstock. I load all of my stamps into my Misty stamping tool and use Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink to ink up all of my images. I love this ink because it stamps crisp lines and is alcohol marker friendly. To get a good impression, I stamp my images 3 times. The Misty stamping tool keeps my paper in place so that I can stamp and re-stamp as many times as I need. The Coaster Critters comes with the words games, food, and tickets. I use a small acrylic block to stamp the words onto my booths. Notice that I rock the acrylic block gently up and down and from side to side as I stamp. I want to make sure that I get a good impression on the first try because I'm not using my Misty stamping tool. Off screen, I colored my images using my Ohuhu alcohol brush markers. Now I carefully position the coordinating dies, use some washi tape to hold the dies in place, and run everything through my die cutting machine. Here you can see all of the images that I use for this card. And wow, there are a lot of images. I want a variety of shapes of clouds, so I stamped out the thought bubble from Happy Hugs and trim off the small trail of bubbles to turn the thought bubbles into clouds. Moving on to the 3D sentiment of this card's design. I die cut the pop-up Hooray using some 100-pound cilantro cardstock, which is a really nice and thick cardstock. You want to use a heavyweight cardstock so that the pop-up element is sturdy. Now, I carefully make the folds along the score lines created by the die. First, I create mountaintop folds along the tops of the letters. I do this slowly to ensure that I am folding the paper in the right place. Moving on to the bottoms of the letters, I create valley folds down, and I use my thumb and thumbnail to gently fold the bottom of the letters in place. Then I make valley folds along the top score line just under the scallop edges. Once again, I use my thumbnail to slowly make the folds all the way across, but I stop just short of both ends as there is no score line to the very ends of the die cut. Finally, there are 2 small score lines in the middle at each end that I valley fold down. Now I can crease those folds down and really reinforce the pop-up element. I cut a 3.5 by 8.5 inch panel using cilantro cardstock and I make a score line 1 inch in from the left. Then I take the paper and I make the crease along the score line that I just made. Taking my 6-inch Grassy Hillside border, I die cut about 2 inches in at the very top of the 1-inch side of the paper's fold on both ends. I don't need to die cut all the way across because this part of the die cut will be hidden behind the pop-up element. But I do die the Grassy Hillside all the way across the very bottom on the 2.5-inch side of the paper's fold. Next, I ink blend some Mowed Lawn Distress Oxide to the tips of the blades of grass and use Twisted Citron Distress Oxide to smooth out the blend. I die cut 2 sets of all the letters I need so that I can layer the letters and make them sturdier, as I plan on tucking some images behind some of these letters. This nice red cardstock comes from Lawn Fawn's Texture Dot Tropical collection, and it pops really well against the green cilantro. Next, I create the card base to which I will adhere the pop-up element. I have a 7 by 8.5 inch piece of accent opaque 120-pound cardstock that I score at the midway 3.5 inch mark on the 7-inch side. This cardstock is very heavy in weight, which is what I want for the base of my 3D pop-up card. I ink blend the entirety of the top panel of the card base using the Cloudy Stencil and Tumbled Glass Distress Oxide. I want to fill the entire background with big fluffy clouds against a bright blue sky. I want these critters to have the perfect weather for their day at the fair. For the bottom panel, I ink blend Twisted Citron Distress Oxide about halfway up from the bottom edge. I want the entire pop-up scene of the card to be about the fair. I arrange all of my images in preparation for adhering them together. There is a fox critter in charge of the blue game booth. I tuck him in behind and add some balloons to his booth. Next, I move on to the bear critter from the Virtual Friends stamp set. This little guy is a little big, but I managed to fit him in behind his ticket booth. I have a second Visual Friends mouse critter who I put in the red roller coaster. I have a bunny working at a second game booth. And finally, I have a mouse in charge of the food booth where he sells cotton candy and other sweet treats. This set of large tracks with 2 small sets of smaller roller coasters is going to be placed in the background. In real life, of course, objects that are farther away in the distance are smaller. Later, this will be propped up using 1 layer of foam tape. The second set of large tracks with the 2 critters riding on the big roller coasters will be in the midground, and I will pop this piece on later using 2 layers of foam tape. All of the remaining critters are going to have cotton candy, balloons, and ride tickets in their hands. I am going to assemble the scene first by adhering the grass piece I die cut and ink blended from earlier. I adhere the stamped and colored cloud images to create more interest in the vast expanse of the blue sky that is the background. Before I adhere the Hooray pop-up element, I tuck 2 booths just behind the H and the Y. These 2 booths will be in the foreground of the scene. Now I can add the pop-up element to the card. I fold the pop-up and add glue first only to the bottom. I adhere the bottom right up against the center crease of the card's fold. Once I know that the bottom is securely in place, I add glue to the top. I fold the top of the card down and I press and hold everything in place. I use a lot of foam tape on this card to create the illusion that there is a background, a midground, and a foreground. I want to share with you the inspiration behind this card's design. Where I am in Toronto, Canada, there is an annual fair called the Canadian National Exhibition, or the CNE for short. The very first CNE fair was held in 1879, and over the decades, going to the CNE has become a tradition for many families. Growing up for me, it was also an annual tradition in my family. My mom would take my little brother and I, and along with my aunt, uncle, and cousin, we would spend the entire day at the fair, playing various games at the booths, trying to win stuffed animal prizes, going on a variety of rides and roller coasters, having delicious snacks in the food building, as well as taking in various agricultural, arts and crafts, and cultural exhibits and shows. The CNE Fair takes place annually during the last 2 weeks in August. This is right before the start of a new school year in September, and the CNE marks the beginning of the end of summer for students, back to school. COVID has brought about the cancellation of the CNE again this summer, but that hasn't stopped me from creating my own fun fair for the lawn fawn critters. Here I have a cloudy front panel where I adhere a simple sentiment: happy, happy day. Because that is what a day at the fair is, a day of happiness for everyone of all ages. The rest of the sentiment is on the inside of the card and shouts, "Hooray!" I adhere this panel to the front of my card base. It's a very simple card front because the inside of this card is the star. I truly enjoyed making this 3D pop-up card that features an incredible day of fun at the annual summer fair for critters. Lawn fawn critters from near and far are at the fair, snacking on their favorite fluffy cotton candy treats, enjoying the wild thrills of the roller coaster rides, and trying their luck at winning stuffed animal prizes at the game booths. Thank you so much for joining me today in this card making video. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. I hope that you will join me again next time. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.